signs, little cracks forming before everything shattered. But life isn't a movie, and betrayal doesn't always come with a dramatic pause or a sinister soundtrack. Sometimes it's just a regular Tuesday and your phone vibrates with a notification that changes everything. The only reason I even looked at the camera feed was habit. I set up those cameras 6 months ago, not because I distrusted my wife, but because I liked knowing our home was secure. I worked long hours and she spent a lot of time alone. I wanted to be sure she was safe. It was a regular thing. A quick glance, a moment of reassurance, and then back to work. But today, I opened the app and instead of an empty living room or my wife watching TV, I saw them. 2 men. Not strangers. Not burglars. Jason and Eric. My closest friends. I didn't react at first. My brain refused to process what I was looking at. Maybe they just stopped by. Maybe they needed something. Maybe then I saw my wife. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't pushing them away. She was smiling. Relaxed, comfortable, like this was the most natural thing in the world. Like my 2 best friends weren't standing too close, touching her in ways they never should have. A sharp ringing filled my ears, drowning out every other sound. I forgot how to breathe. Jason said something and she laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not an uncomfortable one. A real, genuine laugh. Like he had just told the funniest joke in the world. Eric leaned in, murmuring something against her neck, and she didn't pull away. I was still at my desk, frozen, my hands hovering over my keyboard like some idiot who had no idea what to do next. My mouth was dry. My heart was hammering so hard it hurt. I had to be seeing this wrong. I tapped the screen, rewinding the footage. It wasn't wrong. It wasn't a trick of the light or a glitch in the video. My wife had let them into her house. She poured them drinks. They sat on my couch, comfortable like they belonged there. The touches started slow, Jason's hand on her knee, Eric brushing her arm. Testing the waters. And she didn't stop them. She leaned into it. Encouraged it. My stomach turned over. I felt sick. This couldn't be happening. I was still watching when Jason reached out and ran his fingers through her hair like it was his to touch. Eric leaned in, whispering something that made her grin. Something inside me snapped. I pushed back from my desk so fast my chair nearly toppled over. My coworkers turned, startled, but I didn't care. I grabbed my keys, my coat, my phone. My mind was racing. Get home. Now. The office blurred around me as I stormed toward the elevator. I barely noticed my boss calling my name, asking what was wrong. I just walked out. Got in my car. Started driving. The whole way home, my thoughts spiraled. Maybe there's an explanation. Maybe it's not what it looks like. Maybe, no. I wasn't stupid. I saw it with my own eyes. I pulled into the driveway so fast the tires screeched. My hands were shaking. My pulse was a hammer against my ribs. My house, my sanctuary, my life, stood in front of me, looking exactly the same as it had every other day, like it wasn't hiding a betrayal inside. I didn't hesitate. I got out of the car, marched to the front door, and shoved it open, and the 3 of them turned to look at me wide-eyed. They didn't expect this. For a moment, no one spoke. The air in the room changed the second I stepped inside. Before I opened that door, they were relaxed, comfortable. Laughing like this was just another casual afternoon. But now it was as if someone had yanked the oxygen out of the room. Jason had a drink in his hand. He didn't put it down, just sort of held it there mid-air, like he wasn't sure whether to finish his sip or throw it across the room. Eric, always the smoother of the 2, straightened up but kept his hands in his pockets like he had nothing to hide. My wife, she blinked at me once, twice, and then smiled. Not a nervous, "Oh no, I've been caught" kind of smile. No, this was something else. A slow, deliberate curve of her lips, like she had just won a game I didn't even know I was playing. I felt my stomach twist into something ugly. "You're home early," she said, tilting her head slightly, like my presence here was the real offense. I didn't answer. I was still standing in the doorway, still trying to process the fact that my wife, the woman I had loved and trusted for years, was looking at me like I was the one who needed to explain myself. Jason and Eric exchanged a glance. Something quick, something silent, and I caught it. That single flicker of eye contact between them sent a bolt of rage straight through me. How long? How long had this been going on behind my back? How many times had they sat here in my house with my wife while I was at work like an idiot? How many times had I missed the signs because I had trusted them, because I had trusted her? I took a step forward, and Jason cleared his throat, finally setting his drink down on the coffee table. Hey man, we were just... Save it. My own voice surprised me. It was too calm, too steady for what I was feeling. My wife exhaled through her nose, like she was already bored of this conversation. You're overreacting. I laughed. Actually laughed. Overreacting. That was her angle? She was really going to stand there and act like I was the problem? Explain it to me then, I said, my voice low, controlled. What exactly am I overreacting to? The fact that my two best friends are here in my house, getting way too comfortable with my wife while I'm at work? The fact that I saw it happening in real time. She rolled her eyes, like I was being unreasonable, like I was the one making a scene over nothing. Jason shifted uncomfortably. Eric, though? He smirked. Something inside me nearly snapped. Relax, man, Eric said, finally speaking. It's not what you think. Oh? Then what is it? Nothing happened. My wife cut in. You're being dramatic. I stared at her. She said it so smoothly, so confidently, like I hadn't just watched her let them touch her. Like I hadn't seen her smile at them the way she used to smile at me. I could feel my hands curling into fists. Not because I wanted to hit anyone, but because I needed to hold on to something before I lost control completely. Nothing happened? I echoed. She shrugged. They came over, we had some drinks, we were joking around. You are the one making it weird. Joking around, I repeated slowly. Jason, still looking like he wanted to be anywhere but here, nodded quickly. Yeah, man, we were just messing around. No big deal. No big deal. I looked at the three of them, and for the first time I saw them clearly. Not as my friends, not as my wife, but as people who had been making a fool out of me for God knows how long. You're really going to stand there and lie to my face? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. She crossed her arms. You're paranoid. Something about that word sent white-hot rage through me. Paranoid. Like I was imagining things. Like I was some jealous, insecure husband who saw things that weren't there. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and tapped the screen. Paranoid, huh? I swiped through the footage, the evidence, and turned the phone toward her. Then explain this. Her face didn't change. She didn't gasp. She didn't look guilty. She just watched the video, her expression unreadable. Jason and Eric both went stiff, their faces draining of color. And then she did the one thing I never expected. She laughed. Laughed like this was the funniest thing in the world. Like I was some joke she had been playing for a long, long time. And that's when I knew. She didn't regret a damn thing. The laugh. That damn laugh. I had heard it 1,000 times before. At parties, when she was the center of attention. On our date nights, when she had just one drink too many and everything seemed hilarious. In bed, when I said something stupid and she found it endearing. But now, in this moment, it was different. It was sharp, deliberate. Like she was spitting in my face without lifting a finger. Jason and Eric weren't laughing. They were too busy looking at her like she had lost her mind. Even they weren't expecting that. I felt something inside me go ice cold. I wasn't even angry anymore. Not in the screaming, breaking things way I thought I would be. No, this was something deeper. Something heavier. The kind of rage that settled into your bones and stayed there. You think this is funny? I asked. She tilted her head, that smug smirk still on her lips. I think you're being ridiculous. Jason shot her a look as if he was the one who had the right to feel uncomfortable. Eric, the snake that he was, sat down like he was settling in to watch the show. I exhaled slowly, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles ached. So that's it? You're not even going to try to explain yourself? She shrugged. I already did. You're just too insecure to believe me. Insecure. That word nearly made me laugh this time. Jason, finally finding his voice, cleared his throat. Look, man, I get why you're upset, but really, nothing happened. Oh yeah? I turned to him. So if I check the cameras from last week, last month, last year, what am I going to see? He flinched. There it was. I hadn't even checked yet. I hadn't gone through past footage. But his reaction told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't the first time. It had been happening under my nose for God knows how long. My wife noticed the way he stiffened and rolled her eyes again. Jesus, Jason, stop looking so guilty. He's fishing. Am I? I said, turning my gaze back to her. Because your boy here just confirmed everything without saying a word. Eric snorted. Like this was some kind of comedy special and I was the main act. I turned on him next. You think this is funny? He leaned back on the couch, stretching his arms along the back like he owned the place. I think you're getting all worked up over nothing. But hey, if you want to spiral, be my guest. I took a step toward him and for the first time the smirk faltered. Good. You walked into my house, sat on my couch, and put your hands on my wife. And you think I'm just going to let that slide? Eric lifted his hands like he was innocent. Dude, chill. I wasn't going to chill. Not now. Not ever again. I turned to my wife, the woman I had built a life with, the woman I had defended in every argument, supported through every hardship, loved through every flaw. Tell me the truth, I said, my voice eerily calm. How long? She sighed like she was already exhausted with me. Oh, for God's sake, how long? Her eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw something flicker there. Not guilt, not regret, amusement. She wasn't just unremorseful. She was enjoying this. And that was the moment something inside me snapped into place. This wasn't someone who had made a mistake. This wasn't someone who had gotten caught up in something and felt sorry about it. No, this was who she was. A woman who could stand in front of her husband in his home and act like he was the problem. I exhaled slowly, forcing my hands to relax. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of blowing up. That's what she wanted. She wanted a reaction. A dramatic fight. A reason to call me crazy, controlling, irrational. I wouldn't give it to her. Instead, I turned and walked toward the hallway. Where are you going? She called after me, voice laced with irritation. I didn't answer. I walked straight into our bedroom, grabbed the nearest suitcase, and started throwing my clothes into it. Footsteps. Then she was in the doorway, arms crossed. Oh, come on. Don't be so dramatic. I didn't stop. She let out a breathy laugh. You're seriously packing a bag? Where are you even going to go? I zipped up the suitcase and finally turned to face her. Anywhere but here. Her expression shifted just for a second. Just long enough for me to see it. She hadn't expected me to leave. She had expected me to stay. To fight. To grovel. She didn't expect me to walk away. Jason and Eric hovered awkwardly behind her, both looking like they wanted to sink into the floor. I slung the suitcase over my shoulder, grabbed my phone, and walked past all three of them without another word. I was done. Or at least, I thought I was. But as I reached the door, I heard her say something that made me stop in my tracks. Something so venomous, so cruel, that for the first time that night, I genuinely wondered if I had ever known the woman I married at all. You'll be back. Her voice was so confident, so sure, that my grip tightened around the suitcase handle before I even turned around. She stood there, arms crossed, eyes gleaming with something that wasn't sadness or regret, no, it was certainty. She truly believed that no matter what she had done, no matter how deep this betrayal ran, I would come crawling back to her. Jason and Eric had the decency to at least look uncomfortable. They weren't smirking anymore. They weren't laughing. But they weren't saying a damn thing either, which told me everything I needed to know about them. I exhaled slowly, rolling my shoulders back, forcing myself to stay calm. She wanted me to break. She wanted me to snap, to scream, to throw something, to prove that I was the unreasonable one. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. So I just shook my head. You really think that, huh? She smirked. I know it. Eric, the bastard, had the nerve to chuckle under his breath. Jason shot him a look, but it didn't matter. The damage was already done. I stared at her for a long moment, waiting, hoping, for even a flicker of remorse to cross her face, for something, anything, that resembled the woman I thought I knew. But there was nothing, just that same smug amusement, like I was the one making a fool of myself. I nodded once, slowly. You're going to regret this. She laughed. Laughed. Oh, babe, you are not the one in control here. That was it. That was the moment. Not the moment I decided to leave. I had already made that choice. This was the moment I decided I wasn't going to just leave. I was going to burn this entire thing to the ground. I turned on my heel and walked out the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't storm out. I just left. Climbed into my car, suitcase thrown carelessly into the passenger seat, and started driving. My phone buzzed in my pocket, calls, texts, all from her. I ignored them. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. But I was going to make sure that when I walked away from this, I did it in a way that she would never forget. I drove for nearly an hour, letting the weight of everything settle in my chest, before finally pulling into the parking lot of the one place I knew I could go. My brother's house. I barely had the car in park before he was already at the door, phone in hand, confusion etched across his face. Dude? What the hell? I grabbed my suitcase and stalked toward him. I need a place to stay. His eyes narrowed immediately. He stepped aside, letting me in without another word, and shut the door behind me. What happened? I let out a sharp breath, running a hand through my hair. I just walked in on my wife and my two best friends. He went dead silent. And then, with a calmness that was honestly a little terrifying, he said, "Tell me everything." So I did. I laid it all out. The cameras, the video, the confrontation, her complete lack of remorse, the way Jason and Eric just stood there like spineless cowards. My brother didn't interrupt once. He just listened, his expression growing darker with every word. By the time I finished, he was pacing. "So let me get this straight," he said. "You set up cameras to protect her. And instead, you caught her sneaking around behind your back like it was some kind of joke." I nodded. "And she didn't even try to deny it?" I shook my head. He let out a slow, measured breath. "And you just left? What the hell else was I supposed to do?" He stopped pacing. "I don't know. Ruin her life." I let out a humorless laugh. "Oh, don't worry. I'm not done yet." Because I wasn't. She thought she had won. She thought I'd come crawling back, that I'd just accept it, that I'd be too broken to do anything about it. But she underestimated me. And that was her first real mistake. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the best divorce attorney my brother could recommend. He had gone through his own messy split years ago and had kept this guy's number just in case. I wasn't about to let my wife walk away from this thinking she could still somehow control the outcome. I wasn't going to be the pathetic, heartbroken husband she expected. I was going to be the storm she never saw coming. The phone call was short and to the point. I told the lawyer what I had: footage, concrete evidence of my wife and my supposed best friends in my own home, treating my marriage like a joke. He was direct. "Get everything. Bank statements, shared accounts, the deed to the house, any messages, emails, anything that shows she's been unfaithful. The more you have, the better we can bury her in court." That was exactly what I wanted to hear. The second thing I did was start pulling receipts. I still had access to all our shared accounts, which meant I could see everything. And what I found only made my blood boil more. Hotel transactions, dinners, bar tabs, all under her card but paid for on nights I knew I had been working late. This wasn't some one-time mistake. This had been going on for months, maybe even years. I scrolled through our text history looking for any clue that I had been blind to. And then I saw it, a message from her about 3 months ago when I had been stuck at work dealing with a last-minute deadline. "Sorry, babe, long day. Going to bed early. Love you." That same night, she had spent $200 at a luxury hotel downtown. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. She had looked me in the eyes, kissed me, told me she loved me, all while carrying on this disgusting little game behind my back. Fine. She wanted to play games? I'd show her what losing really looked like. I didn't sleep that night. My mind was too wired, my body too full of rage. My brother sat up with me, drinking, planning, scheming. We weren't just going to leave. We were going to wreck her. And then morning came, and the text arrived. "Hey, we need to talk. Come home." I stared at the message for a long time, debating. She wanted to talk? Yeah? After everything? My brother glanced over my shoulder and snorted. She's nervous. Yeah? I muttered. Yeah, he said. She expected you to fight. Yell. Go crazy. Instead, you just left. And that scares her. She doesn't know what you're planning. I smirked. Good. For the first time since this entire nightmare started, I felt a small spark of satisfaction. She should be scared. And since she wanted to talk? Fine. I'd give her a conversation she'd never forget. I grabbed my keys. And I went back home. When I pulled into the driveway, something inside me shifted. This was my house. My home. The place I had built with her, filled with memories, laughter, and love, or at least that's what I thought at the time. Now it felt different. Tainted. Like every moment we had ever shared here was a lie. Like every touch, every kiss, every whispered I love you had been nothing more than a well-rehearsed performance. I took a deep breath, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. I wasn't here to cry. I wasn't here to beg. I was here to watch this burn. When I walked inside, she was waiting for me in the living room, perched on the edge of the couch like she had called the meeting. Like she was the one in control. That smug little smirk was still there, but this time it was a little less sure. She was still playing her game, still convinced she had the upper hand, but there was something else behind her eyes now. A flicker of uncertainty. Good. I didn't say anything. I didn't sit down. I just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. She sighed, rolling her eyes like I was a child throwing a tantrum. You didn't have to run out like that yesterday. I let out a short, humorless laugh. That's where she was going with this? Didn't have to run out, I repeated, shaking my head. Right? Because walking in on my wife cozying up to my best friends in my own house is just a normal Tuesday, huh? She exhaled sharply. Jesus, listen to yourself. You're making this into something it's not. That was it. That was the moment I knew she wasn't just delusional, she was doubling down. Something it's not? I scoffed. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I misinterpret the part where Jason was running his hands through your hair? Or maybe it was the part where Eric whispered in your ear while you sat there smiling. She waved a hand, dismissive. It was harmless. My jaw tightened. Harmless. She really thought I was that stupid. Harmless? I repeated. So tell me, how many other harmless nights have there been? How many times have you invited them over while I was working my ass off to support this marriage? That flicker of uncertainty in her eyes grew for a split second before she recovered, leaning back against the couch with an infuriatingly bored expression. You're being dramatic. There it was again. That tone. The one designed to make me doubt myself. The one that had probably worked on me 1,000 times before. I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I finally saw it. The manipulation. The gaslighting. The way she twisted things just enough to make me question reality. And it wasn't going to work anymore. You're good, I admitted, nodding. I'll give you that. You almost had me. You really did. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I probably would have believed every word coming out of your mouth right now. Her expression hardened. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? I said, tilting my head. Then let's talk about the hotel charges. She went very, very still. Bingo. I went through our bank statements, I continued, stepping closer. Imagine my surprise when I found out that 3 months ago, on a night you told me you were home alone, you actually spent $200 at a hotel across town. Should I keep going? Because I've got plenty more. Her face twisted into something ugly. You went through my accounts? I laughed outright at that. That was what she was mad about? Oh, I'm sorry, did I invade your privacy? I said mockingly. That must be so hard for you. I can't imagine what it must feel like to be betrayed by someone you trust. She shot up from the couch, fists clenched. You're such a hypocrite. Oh, this I gotta hear, I said, folding my arms. Go on. Enlighten me. She opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head like I wasn't even worth the effort. You know what? Believe whatever you want. I don't owe you an explanation. I stared at her. And then I laughed again because it was just so pathetic. You don't owe me an explanation? I repeated. You don't owe me the truth? After everything? She shrugged, smug again. You already made up your mind. Nothing I say is going to change it. She was right. Because I had all the proof I needed. I turned and walked toward the front door. Where are you going? She snapped, her confidence cracking. I glanced back at her, feeling lighter than I had in years. To get what's mine. And I left. I didn't go back to my brother's place. I went to Jason's. I didn't text, didn't call, didn't give him any warning. I wanted to see his face when he opened the door, wanted to see if he had the guts to look me in the eye after what he had done. When I pulled up outside his apartment, I sat there for a second, just breathing. The anger was still there, still coiled in my chest like something alive, but it was controlled now. Sharpened. I wasn't here to throw punches. I was here to do something worse. I stepped out of the car, walked up to the door, and knocked. There was a long pause. Then the sound of footsteps. The door cracked open and Jason's face appeared, still groggy like I had just woken him up. His hair was a mess. He was wearing a t-shirt and sweats, looking nothing like the guy who had been sitting so comfortably in my house yesterday, laughing with my wife. When he saw me, his whole body went rigid. Man, his voice was cautious. "What are you doing here?" I smiled. "We need to talk." He hesitated. Then, reluctantly, he stepped back and let me in. The place was exactly what I expected, messy, a couple of empty beer bottles on the table, clothes draped over the couch like he had just been existing here. No real order. No real effort. It hit me then how different we were. I had spent years building a home. Jason had spent years treating every place he lived in like a temporary stop. Maybe that's why he never thought twice about ruining someone else's. He rubbed the back of his neck as I walked inside. "Look, man, I know you're pissed. I cut in, still smiling. "No. Pissed would have been yesterday. I'm way past that now." He swallowed hard. Look, it wasn't what you think. We weren't. Save it." My voice was flat. "I don't care what pathetic excuse you have. I don't care how you try to spin it. What I do care about," I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice, "is that you sat there, in my house, on my couch, and acted like you were my friend while you were sneaking around with my wife." His mouth opened, closed. He had nothing, so I kept going. "You were there when I married her. You stood next to me, gave a toast, told me how lucky I was. You came over for game nights, birthdays, holidays. You acted like my brother." His jaw tightened. He couldn't look at me. "How long?" I demanded. Jason hesitated for a second too long. And that's when I knew. This wasn't new. I exhaled slowly. "How long?" I repeated. His eyes darted away. "A few months." I stared at him. "Try again." Silence. "Jason." His shoulders slumped. And then finally, barely above a whisper, "A year." A cold wave washed over me. Not shock, I had suspected as much. But hearing it out loud, confirming just how deep this betrayal ran, made something inside me harden. "A year," I echoed. I let the words sink in. "So, while I was out busting my ass at work, providing for her, for us, you were sneaking around behind my back like a coward?" He flinched. "Good. She came to me," he said quickly. "She said things weren't good between you two, that you were distant, that she felt neglected." I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Oh, so that makes it okay? You were just being a good friend." He clenched his jaw. "It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that." Jason exhaled harshly, finally meeting my gaze. "Look, I screwed up, okay? I know that. But you're not innocent in this, man. She was miserable. You were always working, always." I took a step forward and he shut his mouth instantly. "I was working," I said slowly, "for her. To give her a good life. To build a future. And while I was doing that, she was crawling into bed with you." He had nothing to say to that. I studied him for a moment, then nodded to myself. "You know what? I actually feel sorry for you." Jason frowned. "What?" I gestured around the apartment. "This. You. You really thought you were special, didn't you? That she actually cared about you?" I let out a small chuckle. "She used you, man. Just like she used me." He shook his head. "That's not true." "Oh, isn't it?" I pulled out my phone, opened my messages, and scrolled until I found what I was looking for. Then I turned the screen toward him. It was a text from her. From this morning. "He's mad, but he'll get over it. He always does. He's too weak to leave me." Jason's face drained of color. I kept scrolling. "But just in case, don't call me for a while. I don't need him getting suspicious." His breathing was shallow now. And then the final nail in the coffin. "You're fun, but come on. Did you really think this was serious?" Jason staggered back like I had punched him in the gut. I tilted my head. "Still think you're different?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. I let the silence stretch, watching as the reality of it all sank in. Then I slipped my phone back into my pocket, turned toward the door, and said, "Enjoy the mess you made." And with that, I walked out, leaving him to drown in the wreckage. I wasn't done yet. Jason had been easy. A spineless idiot who let himself get played. But Eric? Eric was different. He wasn't some fool who had just fallen into it. No, Eric was calculated. He was the kind of guy who liked taking things that didn't belong to him just to see if he could. He wasn't just a snake, he was the type to smile while he bit you. And I wasn't about to let him slither away from this untouched. I knew exactly where to find him. Eric worked at a high-end marketing firm downtown, the kind of place with glass walls, modern furniture, and overpriced coffee. The kind of place where reputation mattered more than anything. I parked right across the street, taking my time as I leaned back in my seat, watching the entrance. People came and went, all of them looking like they thought they were important. And then, right on schedule, he walked out. Eric always carried himself like he owned the world. Even now, wearing a tailored suit, his phone in hand, his expression smug, he looked like he had one. Like none of this touched him. That was about to change. I climbed out of the car, crossed the street, and called out, "Hey, Eric." He turned at the sound of his name, and when he saw me, his smirk widened. "Unbelievable." "Damn, man," he said, slipping his phone into his pocket. "You look like hell." I smiled. "You should see the other guy." He let out a laugh, shaking his head. "Look, before you say anything," I didn't let him finish. I stepped in closer, dropping my voice low enough that only he could hear. "I wonder what your boss would think if they knew one of their top guys was sleeping with a married woman?" His smirk twitched. Just slightly. But I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward him. The video played. Not the one from the living room, not the one that was just suggestive enough to raise questions. No, this was worse. This was footage from 2 months ago from the camera in our bedroom. The one I had installed when we were out of town for a weekend because my wife had been worried about security. In it, Eric sat on my bed, drinking from my glass, looking way too comfortable. My wife was next to him, leaning in close, whispering something in his ear that made him grin. I could see the exact moment Eric realized what he was looking at. The color drained from his face, his jaw tightening. He glanced around quickly, making sure no one could see. "Are you out of your mind?" he hissed. "Where the hell did you get that?" I tilted my head. That's the problem with messing around in another man's house. You never know what's watching. His hands curled into fists at his sides. Not because he wanted to fight, Eric wasn't a fighter. He was a coward. No, he was panicking. He knew exactly how fast this could all fall apart. "I wonder what your clients would think," I mused, locking my phone. "Or your colleagues. Or, hell, your girlfriend." His head snapped up. "Bingo." I gave him a slow, knowing smile. "Yeah. You thought I didn't know about her?" His breathing turned shallow. "This isn't funny." "No," I agreed. "It's not." For the first time since I had known him, Eric looked afraid. He had built his entire image on being untouchable. A successful businessman. A guy who had everything under control. A guy who didn't make mistakes. But he had made one. A big one. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to disappear. You're going to cut off all contact with my wife. No calls, no texts, nothing. You're going to pretend she never existed." His jaw clenched. "Or what?" I smiled. "Or I start sending out some very interesting emails." Silence. I could practically see his mind racing. Could he risk it? Could he survive it? No. Finally, through gritted teeth, he muttered, "Fine." I patted his shoulder. Smart choice. Then, without another word, I turned and walked away. One down. One to go. I wasn't satisfied yet. Jason was drowning in his own guilt. Eric was scrambling to protect his precious reputation. But the person who started all of this, the one who thought she could control the outcome, was still sitting comfortably in my house, acting like she had already won. And I wasn't about to let that happen. So I went back. Not to talk. Not to argue. Not to hear another round of excuses and gaslighting. I went back to finish it. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was there. Good. I let myself in with my key. Not because I still considered it my home, but because I wanted her to know she had no idea what was coming. She was in the kitchen, sipping coffee at the counter, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a single care in the world. When she heard the door shut, She barely looked up. "You again?" she said, setting her phone down. "Let me guess. You had another meltdown and need to make some dramatic exit speech." I smiled. She was still playing, still acting like she was in control. I walked over, leaned against the counter across from her, and took my time before responding. "Actually, I'm here to let you know you're out." Her brow furrowed slightly, just for a second, before she schooled her expression into boredom. "Out of what?" "This house," I said simply. "My life. All of it." She scoffed, shaking her head. "You really think you can kick me out of our house?" I reached into my pocket, pulled out the deed, and slid it across the counter toward her. Her smirk faltered. "I bought this house before we got married," I reminded her. "My name is the only one on that deed. I let you think it was ours, that we were building something together. But legally," I shrugged, "this has never been your home. And now, it never will be." She snatched up the papers, scanning them like she expected to find some loophole, some way out of this. She wouldn't. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You can't just throw me out." "I can," I said. "And I did. The eviction notice is already filed. You have 1 week." She let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "You're insane." "No," I said, "I just finally woke up." I watched as she tried to compose herself, but I could see it. The panic. The realization that, for the first time, she wasn't in control. And then, she tried one last play. She softened, tilted her head, let her voice drop into something almost apologetic. "Look, I know things got messy, but do you really want to do this? After everything we've been through?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean after everything you've done?" She sighed, leaning forward. "I made mistakes. You made mistakes. But does it really have to end like this?" I laughed. Actually laughed. "I didn't make mistakes," I said. "I made the mistake of trusting you. That's it." Her eyes darkened. "You're going to regret this." "No," I said, standing up straight, grabbing the papers from the counter. "You are." And with that, I walked out the door, leaving her to drown in the ruins of the life she thought she had under control. She had 1 week to leave. 7 days to pack her things and get out of a house she had never deserved to live in. 7 days to sit in the mess she had made, realizing she had lost. I didn't go back after that. I didn't need to. My lawyer handled everything, froze our joint accounts, started the divorce process, and made sure there was no way she could try to drag this out longer than necessary. She tried, of course. She sent texts, called, left voicemails that ranged from fake apologies to outright threats. I ignored every single one. By the time the week was up, I was ready to see the last of her. So on the final day, I drove back, not to talk, not to argue, just to watch her leave. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was still there. She was running out of time. I stepped out and walked up to the front door, but I didn't even need to knock. The moment she saw me through the window, she yanked it open, face twisted in frustration. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she snapped. I smiled. "More than you'll ever know." She scoffed, arms crossed. "You think you won?" I leaned against the doorframe, completely calm. "Oh, I know I did." She let out a sharp breath, shaking her head. "You're such a child." I shrugged. "And yet here you are, the one being thrown out like a piece of trash." Her face flashed with anger, real and unfiltered, before she masked it again. "I don't need this house," she said coolly. "I already have places I can go." I tilted my head. "Jason's?" Her jaw clenched. I chuckled. "Oh, right? Probably not, since he finally figured out that you used him just like you used me." She didn't answer. She wouldn't, because she knew it was true. I took my phone out of my pocket, scrolling for a second before holding it up for her to see. "Oh, and Eric?" "Yeah, he's been real quiet lately. I'm guessing that has something to do with his job being on the line." Her eyes darted to the screen, and for the first time I saw something real. Fear. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and smiled. "So tell me, where exactly are you going?" She hated that question. She hated that for the first time in a long time she didn't have the upper hand. She squared her shoulders. "I'll be fine." I nodded. "I'm sure you will." Then I took a step back, gesturing toward the driveway. "Now, get the hell out of my house." She didn't say anything. She just grabbed her last bag, shoved past me, and climbed into her car. She hesitated, like she wanted to get the last word in, like she thought one final sentence could somehow undo everything. I didn't give her the chance. I turned and walked back inside, shutting the door behind me, and just like that, she was gone. I stood there for a long moment, letting it settle. The house felt different, quieter, lighter. For the first time in years, I could breathe. I had lost my wife, my so-called friends, and the life I thought I had built. But in the end, I didn't lose a damn thing worth keeping.